Welcome to Spark 101 Voices, where we have stimulating conversations around STEM learning and STEM earning. This episode will be the second half of our conversation with Andre Jones. Andre is an aviation safety inspector, air carrier avionics for the FAA. Congratulations to Andre from all of us at Spark 101 on your new role with the FAA. Because the world is how it is right now, and there's been a drastic decrease in flights going places people aren't traveling because of COVID, do you see that as a great negative to the aerospace industry? Or, can you talk a little bit about what you expect over the next year or so as far as rebounding? Or are aerospace mechanics and technicians still in demand? Is this a career that somebody should look into?
Absolutely. There will be a bounce back, just like when 9/11 occurred. Actually, I was in A&P school when that happened, and I thought to myself, did I make the right move in starting a new career in aviation? But it did bounce back in a year or so. The technicians right now are still in a high demand, especially avionics technicians, and also women in aviation are needed. I think with the aircrafts being parked, that causes another problem because you would have to go in and do different type of inspection. So there are many, many rules to parking an aircraft. Just like anything else, you have to go out and run the engine every so many days and, run the water and things like that. So that being said, there will be many, many jobs available for aircraft technicians in the next year or so. I'm almost sure of it. And hopefully we can even get programs launched in more high schools because we have a lot of mechanics that will be retiring as well. So the influx should be coming soon.
Take that a little bit farther. Do you see any big changes happening, in 10 years with your industry?
I think in the next 10 years, the industry will be younger, more advanced in electronics, avionics to meet the demands of the new technology.
We see a lot of touch screens in cars. If you look at a Tesla and look at its dashboard, it's just a big screen. But I still think of looking at when you see the cockpit. I remember the old space shuttle when you look at the cockpit and it was just knobs and dials, and amazed that it ever actually took off. Are you seeing changes like that happening in aircraft so that a greater understanding of electronics are needed?
Absolutely. And not only is a greater understanding of electronics is needed, but we now have what they call glass cockpits. So in some of your newer business jets, especially, there aren't any dials. So it's all a touch screen like an iPad. So then how do you replace the component? It's behind the glass screen, right? So then you would have to go in, so under the hood, so to speak, or behind the screen and do a remove, replace type of scenario or testing. So we need what we call Sparkies. We need more newer technicians to be Sparkies, to know their way around electronics, to know how to test, to know how to troubleshoot in a glass cockpit type scenario.
You mentioned a need for women in the industry. So can you talk for me a little bit about maybe some of the challenges and opportunities related to diversity in aerospace?
I've worked with only a handful of women in my 20-year career. And what I've heard in the last year or so from women mechanics is that they weren't seen as equals in a predominantly male environment. So I find that to be a problem with companies. So one of the things necessary, I would say, is to promote aviation at a younger age, but encourage the women to get involved. And let me take that a little bit farther, because if we go back to the World War II, where women were sparkies, they were running wires, they were doing things, troubleshooting electronics, things of that nature. But a woman mechanic can do anything that a man can do. I have seen women remove and replace engines, troubleshoot any type of system on an aircraft. Anything that men can do in aviation, a woman can do it as well. So I think it's important for the industry to get out and promote women in aviation as much as they can.
I like the Rosie the Riveter reference. So
Yes.
why is it important that the industry get out? And you talked about women, but add diversity as a whole. Why can't the industry just maintain the status quo?
To be with the times, we have to go with the times. We are a multicultural, multinational country, and not just America, but all over the world. There are people who have, migrated to different areas. So I think companies should also reflect that. We have to learn to appreciate the differences that everybody brings in society. So I think a good, well-managed company would reflect everyday life, in America.
And you mentioned that you don't have to have everything to start with. How would you suggest a student do that?
There are many opportunities available right now for students to get skills. I think there are some short-term certification programs in aircraft assembly, aircraft avionics, aircraft electronics. And I would encourage a student to pursue the 6 to 12-week programs that they can get a certificate that's recognized by the industry to start working.
Are you familiar with any programs in high schools to help get students going in the right directions?
There are a few programs that are tied to, let's say, an aviation college or a technical school, also an aviation trade school. What I'm seeing in Dallas is several high schools are using an articulation agreement to work with either the technical college or the technical, I guess it would just be a community college, in order to get their program installed into the high school. So connecting the dots to the colleges and the technical schools is the way that the high schools could get involved or get tied to the industry.
Okay, but there are things out there for students, possibly in high schools, that can help show them the path and get them on that path to that type of career. What if, so say I didn't have something like that, maybe a rural school that doesn't have the connections to aerospace but might have VOTEC type schooling or classes like that. Would it be beneficial for me to get involved in something that might be more readily available, like auto mechanics? Can those skills transfer over to aerospace?
Great question, Russ. Absolutely. Auto mechanics, diesel mechanics, even electronics, or you can even tie in the IT technology CTE programs to aviation. One thing I realized after I graduated many years ago is diesel mechanics were looking for me to join the workforce. Also, in the line of being a diesel mechanic or auto mechanic, the railroad industry was also pursuing aviation mechanics. So these types of mechanical skills, they're closely related. And so if aviation was not a part of the VOTEC or CTE program at the high school, then these other mechanical skills would be very helpful and beneficial to the students.
I never thought about it until you said it, but I could really see the railroad industry very interested in aerospace mechanics. Would it be the same type of design on rail cars that the similar aerodynamics, similar materials, the engines, would those be even close?
Those would also be close. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head with that. So again, there's sheet metal involved. There's electronics, layers of electronics involved, engine work involved. So structural design is involved. So it's definitely relatable.
Are you seeing any of that specifically in Dallas because you have the railway project going? Is there any more interest in that area? I mean, I know you have a huge demand for aerospace and it's a very high growth job in DFW, but are you seeing the train industry come in and say, hey, we're very interested in these guys there as well?
Absolutely. I don't know if you're aware, but Dallas is in, I'm not sure how close they are, but very close to developing a speed train from Dallas to Houston. So they're definitely reaching out to students for mechanical skills and aptitude.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that at all until you said it. That's kind of cool. Can you tell me, what experiences have you had that positively impacted your career?
Certainly, opportunity is the best thing. And when people see, let's say your supervisors, your managers, when they see your hunger for knowledge, you can be a part of certain teams to further your knowledge of the aircraft, so to speak. So let me give you a scenario. I was working fast and furious my first 2 years in aviation. I was noticed by a lead mechanic, and he asked me to join his team. So I did. From there, I continued to maintain my hunger for knowledge, and I moved up to an inspector. I started inspecting multiple aircraft throughout my shift. From there, I became a quality manager. Again, there's so many layers to aviation, and opportunity really allowed me to learn more and more. And as I began to discover how quality is tied to everything that you do, including your paperwork, your inspections, how you communicate with your fellow mechanics, how do you communicate with management, how do you write reports. So all these things are involved when you begin to advance yourself. So I was very fortunate to have had many people recognize my hard work and desire to learn more. And I was able to be handpicked on several projects in the U.S. and abroad, which again broadened my scope of how aviation is tied together. The industry, it may appear to be so big, but everything is really tied together, and it's a small, small world. And I was able to travel to China on one of the projects. I'm the first person to have walked the Great Wall in my family, despite having grown up in a military family. So it's things like that that inspired me to continue to grow and learn more and more. When I got into aviation as a A&P mechanic, I had no idea I would be able to travel the world with my skills, with my technical skills from a trade school. And it's all about where you want to take your career. There are many, many opportunities, and some people, they want to just go to work. They want to be a mechanic and be promoted to a lead mechanic, maybe even a maintenance manager at the same location they start. We need people like that too. We also need people that want to grow and aspire to be all they can be in the world and help the industry grow.
Why did you get into aviation?
You know, I got into aviation because I was inspired actually by my two uncles who were in the Air Force. One was an air traffic controller. The other was an aircraft mechanic. Both retired from the Air Force and worked in the industry. One worked for Southwest Airlines and retired. The other worked for United Airlines and retired. I was stationed on an aircraft carrier when I was in the Navy, so I had firsthand experience to the fun and excitement of a jet, you know, landing on the aircraft carrier, taking off, and all the mechanics behind that. And when I saw that, and having, you know, people in my family that were already in aviation, I just knew that this could be a path for me to, you know, make my dreams come true, so to speak. I wanted to have a career that was exciting, that was always moving and growing and changing with technology. So that's why I pursued it. And here I am 20 years later, and I'm still inspired. I have been working with the FAA directly for the last 15 years, meaning I've been audited by the FAA, I've been interviewed by the FAA, I've provided reports to the FAA and things like that. To me, I want kids to know, or anybody that's new in the industry, to always look to the FAA for the answer. So that means the FAA writes the rules, the regulations, they provide guidance. I think it's important to pursue being a part of the FAA as a career. You know, when you start out as a mechanic, of course, you're not thinking, oh, maybe someday I'll get to join the FAA. Well, the last 10 years, I have had that vision. I want to be a part of the FAA because what's important to me is the safety and airworthiness of people and the aircraft. And the FAA is the authority. So when we're working as mechanics, it's important for us to follow the rules and regulations written by the FAA. So with that in mind, I think an end goal would be as a mechanic to say, okay, well, I would like to work as a mechanic for a few years, then an inspector for a few years, maybe a manager for a few years, and then ultimately be a part of the aviation. This is the top of the industry. The FAA is the top of the aviation industry. They provide the oversight, surveillance. So I just want to add that this should be a pursuit for a technician in all aspects of being a mechanic.
It's interesting, in talking with you, one of the underlying things that I find so comforting is you all always talk about the safety of people on your aircrafts. It makes me feel good and feel safe flying on an aircraft knowing that there's people like you, because your goal is the safety of your passengers. And that means a lot to me. But you were mentioning, you know, the FAA, and your end goal and career-wise is working to the FAA, and you've been working with the FAA for 15 years. And you mentioned that things like audits. When we think of audits, when I think of audits, that has I don't want to say a scary connotation to it, but have you seem to look forward to that type of thing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. To me, Russ, an audit is an opportunity for improvement. So one in the industry should want the FAA to come in and take a look at what they're doing, look at their programs, their processes, their procedures, how they run the business. If more people look at audits as opportunities, we wouldn't have people trying to hide things, right? So nobody is perfect in this industry. We all have hiccups, and there's some issues here and there. However, if you look at an audit as an opportunity for another set of eyes, let's say a third set of eyes on your processes and procedures, then you can improve. The safety can improve. Your workforce and personnel can improve. The morale of the people working around you will improve.
What type of a pathway, what would you do? Are you interested in working with or working for the FAA at this point?
Oh, absolutely. I am pursuing an aviation safety inspector role right now. What one could do is look at usajobs.gov, and look at the criteria to be an inspector. So of course, it's based on your experience on different types of aircraft. Even pilots can become aviation safety inspectors based on the aircraft that they fly. But that is the way to get there. You have to be a part of a government job search. And they do, the FAA does post jobs on LinkedIn. And so the pathway is to read the criteria, look at the job description. Do you meet it? Are you confident that you want to go take your career to the next level, to be a part of the surveillance, the audit structure, the oversight of airspace, aircraft safety, aircraft maintenance, repair station operations, and things like that? And all those things are excited to me because I want to be a part of enhancing the safety and airworthiness of the industry.
And it's the way you're saying it, the things that you're saying, you're talking about surveillance and oversight. You're looking at all of those as a positive. It's not, you're not coming to look to have somebody do surveillance on your work or oversight on your work. You want them to, you really are welcoming them into what you're doing in a way to improve the procedures and make things better.
Absolutely, and it is a positive. It's a positive resource. I have always called my FAA inspector and asked questions. We're doing this. We're working on that. We have a new program. Do I have the right guidance to move forward with this in the safest possible way? And my inspectors have always responded to me very clearly. This is the guidance you need to follow. If you have any questions, feel free to call or email me. Or if you would like, I could stop by and we could talk about it in person. I can meet with your management team. I have had a positive experience with the authorities, with the FAA. And I think having the FAA is it's necessary for the industry to grow.
Thank you, Andre, for that look into careers in aerospace. To learn more about the work that Andre does, check out the Spark 101 Aerospace Industry Career Snapshot on spark101.org. Thanks again to our guest today on Spark 101 Voices, and thank you listeners for joining us. You can connect with me and the whole Spark 101 team on all the socials by searching Spark 101 STEM, or visit us directly at spark101.org.